Over our 20 years in business, Anvil Media has had the pleasure of working with a number of really excellent agribusiness leaders. And one of those is a guy by the name of John McKillop. And John joins me now. G'day, John.
Darryl, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. How about you?
Not too bad, thank you, for a lockdown in Victoria.
You're in Gippsland, or not Gippsland, Geelong, aren't you?
South of Geelong.
John, you've had a really interesting career, which has given you a whole lot of insights into the agribusiness sector. Give us a quick potted history of your career.
Yeah, thanks, Darryl. I was born in Western New South Wales and always had the intention of going back on a family farm. And so consequently, I studied farm management at Orange Ag. And it was probably 3 or 4 years after I went home that I realised that dream wasn't going to happen. It was too small. There were too many siblings to buy out. So I ventured off and worked as a rural financial counsellor and then as a consultant, and then eventually moved up to Brisbane, working for KPMG, and luckily one of the clients that I was working for was Grain Co. So that sort of took me over to that more corporate orientated space. And that sort of then, I suppose, led to me then joining Stanbroke not long after that, which really led me into this corporate agricultural space, which is where I've been for the last 15 plus years. So Stanbroke, and then into Elders, and then to running Clyde Agriculture for the Swire family, and then eventually into running Hassard for the Qataris. So the common thread amongst 3 of those is that they've all divested within 2 to 3 years of me joining them. So it's given me a lot of experience in selling rural property.
Hence the new venture that you've got, which is called LAWD, LAWD. Tell me what that is, what it stands for, and what that's all about.
So LAWD stands for Land, Agribusiness, Water and Development. It's as you say, a new company. We officially opened the doors on the 1st of July. It's a rural transaction and valuation business, but also moving to that peri-urban zoning area. So, which is where the farm gets converted into a suburb, etc. So it's almost a natural extension for where we are in that agribusiness space.
What was it that caused you to think there was a gap in the market there?
So a lot of the people had worked, in fact, all of those who have joined work for one or two of the larger organisations. And I suppose whilst they are multinational global organisations, the downside of that is that they're very slow to react to the market changes in the market. And agribusiness is such a small part of their business that we always felt that we were paying second fiddle to CBD property or warehouses or shopping centres, etc. Whereas now we're able to react very quickly, have a turnaround because we're controlling the whole process, and allowing us to, I suppose, put some more specialised software in and some specialised systems in there that enable us to be more responsive to the client.
What's COVID done to change that market, the market for particularly peri-urban, I suppose, real estate?
Yeah, peri-urban is probably the one that's suffered the most, and that was really why we've included it, not because we thought we were heading into COVID, but we've really included it because it is almost counter-cyclical to agriculture generally. So we would have times when that peri-urban market's going to be flat, and there'll be times when the agricultural agribusiness market's flat. So we've got those sort of diversity of income coming in without getting too far away from our core business. COVID so far to date hasn't slowed down the agribusiness market at all. We've been fortunate that most of our presence in recent times has been in New South Wales, which has continued to flow along very quickly and nicely. And our valuations work is largely based out of Brisbane to date, but we're hoping that that'll change down to Victoria once we get once we come out of these restrictions and we're able to travel a bit more.
I guess one of the great changes that's been much talked about in COVID has been the shift away from going into the office, and therefore that probably translates into the possibility that people who previously lived in the city think to themselves, heck, I don't need to live in Strathfield or Paran. I can move somewhere else to my dream home. Is that an impact for you?
It certainly has been an impact. We have an office in Yass, so it's only 40 minutes out of Canberra and probably 3 hours out of Sydney, and that's been a lot of that market. People looking at it saying, well, maybe I'll live at Yass or Gunning or Goulburn and I'll travel to Sydney a day a week or 2 days a week, and I'll spend the rest of the time living somewhere where it's a nicer lifestyle. I wonder how long that will go on for, because I think humans tend to like to congregate and like that social interaction. And whilst you can get a lot done, and we've had to do it on Zoom and Teams meeting, there's nothing quite like that getting together every now and again and just chewing around ideas and those side conversations that you have with people as they walk through the corridor or in the kitchen that you can't do on Teams meeting. So I think there's a lot that's been lost in COVID, but I think it's also probably we've gained a lot by understanding that we probably don't need to spend half our lives at an airport travelling everywhere as well.
Now, I want to come back to your career, because it sort of talks about both the kinds of careers that are available in the agri sector, but also the kinds of careers that a degree in agriculture can take you into. I mean, you and I studied, in some respects, very similar things. I did agricultural economics at around the same time as you did your agribusiness degree, and we've had vastly different careers, though they're a very similar starting point, both from a farm, for instance.
Yes, it is such a diverse area to be in, and it's really a catch-all phrase, agribusiness. It does cover everything from ag tech now through to as basic as putting fertiliser and selling that, through to running farms, through to grain trading, through to banking. I mean, it's almost a subset of all those other sectors that you can be in, but broadly under the term of agribusiness. So it certainly is a fair way from what we would traditionally think as being sitting on a tractor or mustering sheep or mustering cattle in the Northern Territory. There's a lot more to agribusiness and agriculture now than there was 20 or 30 years ago. It's a very exciting place to work, and it pays well. People on farms for Hassard, there were farm managers there on $150,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, plus a house, plus a car, rates paid, telephone paid, everything else. You'd need to be on 250 plus in the city to be on a similar sort of package. Admittedly, you might say, well, I have to live, in somewhere not near a cafe, but that's fine. If you're happy with that lifestyle, it's very attractive and it pays well.
Get yourself a coffee machine.
Exactly, much cheaper. Yes.
Do you think that the opportunities in agriculture are well understood, even in rural Australia, but especially in the city amongst school leavers?
No, it always amazes me that what people see as being, I have to go out there and drive a tractor, or I have to go and do the boring stuff to be in agriculture. And whilst I think that really helps in some streams of agriculture to get where you want to go to, it's not an imperative. There are people who work in agribusiness that I'd say have just really developing IT systems, or there are people working in agriculture who are just grain trading. It's a very broad church of skill set that you can have, and depending where your interest is to where you head with it.
And then the flip side of that is the opportunities that are open to people with an agriculture degree which are not even necessarily in agriculture.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of people coming out of it who maybe have studied international business or business generally or marketing, that are now finding niche roles and well-paying roles within agriculture. And it's really quite inspiring to see the young ones coming through, and you either know them personally or follow them through LinkedIn, and there's so much energy and enthusiasm in them, and it's really great to see those next crop of people coming through that are just embracing agriculture for what it is and excited about it.
Do you miss driving a tractor yourself?
Not at all. No, in fact, a couple of years ago, I did sit in one and thinking, the last time I really drove one was a John Deere 4440, which, had about 6 gears, and that was about it. Whereas now, of course, there's just computer screens everywhere, and I did look at it and think, I'm not sure I could even start it now. So I've certainly lost that touch.
Well, yeah, certainly. I'm the same, although the attraction of it, though I haven't done it for ages, the attraction of it hasn't completely disappeared. The idea of sitting on a tractor for 8 hours a day and just listening to Led Zeppelin and the Electric Light Orchestra while I go around and around and around is something feeling about that.
Is that I used to sit on the tractor and I'd start to think, I wonder what Darryl meant by that. And because, after 8 hours of turning it around, I'd be very, upset about it. Because then you'd get off the tractor and completely forget and realise that it didn't really matter. But so sometimes I think too much thinking time as you're sitting on a tractor, going up and down a paddock or around and around as we used to do.
Yeah. You've been part of the Primary Industries Education Foundation, which really has something of a remit for communicating that idea of careers in agriculture to young people. What do you think it's really going to take to achieve that mission?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an ever-increasing battle, but we've just got to keep that message going that agriculture is a legitimate career. It's a career that's worth pursuing. It's a very enjoyable career. You meet people in other sectors who do what they do because they make money out of it. Most people you meet in agriculture do it because they love it. And there's not many industries where you'd find that really high rate of people who do what they do because they love it, not just because they make money out of it. And part of the Primary Industries Education Foundation charter was to keep putting in front of people at a school age the benefits of working in agriculture, understanding where food and fibre comes from, and therefore considering it as they're developing their curriculum for years 11 and 12, and then considering what they do at university to actually build agriculture into that thought process.
Mm-hmm. That's obviously a subset of the general job that agriculture has of communicating to the public at large about itself. What do you think are the keys to doing that? And I guess we're coming from a perspective of being a video production company, so video is very important to us, and we think it's a marvellous tool for that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we've just got to keep selling that message and understanding, getting people to understand that food and fibre message, and that agriculture isn't necessarily a dirty industry. It's not an industry that's cruel. It's not an industry that's a high polluter. There's a lot of, and it's not an industry that's a backward industry. You know, there's a lot of tech. People care about animal welfare. People care about the environment. So I think we've just got to keep reinforcing that. And video is such a powerful way of doing that. That looking and maybe not feeling, but certainly as close as you can get to that by that experiencing and talking to people and getting their message out there about what they're doing on their farms or within their supply chains.
It's helpful if you want to sell your farm as well.
Well, actually, back to where we were with LAWD, we've developed fully electronic information memorandums that have different overlays in them now. So we've gone away from having the traditional 6-page brochure with 4 glossy pictures in it. This is a whole range of data-driven information memorandums to help people identify what it is they want about a property and what they like and don't like and what they'll need to change if they get in there. So again, even that is just now to be fully electronic. We've got GPS mapping systems in each car, so as people travel around, they can see where they've been on the farm, and then that's downloaded to them at the end of the inspection, so they've got something to say, yeah, okay, we went there, or maybe next time we need to go to that other spot. So I think technology is changing even in the ag real estate space.
Going back to an earlier part of your career, not so long ago, when you were working for Hassard and Swire, both were businesses from outside of Australia, and it's quite a bone of contention for some foreign control of Australian farming assets. What are your thoughts there?
I think to me it was summed up by a member of the NTCA, Northern Territory Cattlemen's Association, at an NFF members council meeting that said largely the Northern Territory was built on foreign investment. It comes and it goes, and it generally leaves assets in better condition than when they found them. And I think that's the key to it. You know, I'm yet to think of an example where foreign investment has come in and depleted an asset or degraded it. Generally, and I look at Hassard, say Tilapia Downs. Tilapia Downs was 11 different properties in Western Victoria, across into the South Australian border. There were 5 permanent people living on that, what is now 47,000 hectares. When Hassard sold it, the capacity had been almost tripled of those properties, and there were 36 people living on it, you know, of which 18 worked on the farm and the rest were spouses and children. You know, the school bus had been increased twice. The local football club was going well. And to me, it's hard to see that was a downside of foreign investment. And that farm has now been purchased by a local Australian entity, the McBride family, and they will get the benefit of it. Now, did Hassard make any money out of it? No. But I don't think that's really what public policy should be concerned about. We should be concerned about whether foreign investment is coming in and doing a good job for agriculture or for the economy generally. And I think there's certainly more examples where it's done good. And I'm yet to find an example where foreign investment in Australian agriculture has been a bad thing.
John, your latest role is as chairman of the Red Meat Advisory Council. Now, what does the Red Meat Advisory Council do, and what do you see as being the task ahead for your period of appointment?
RMAC, as it's known, is not a well-known entity. So its function is as the peak council of cattle council, sheep meats councils, the goat industry, the processing sector, and the live trade sector. So it's the peak body of all of those, and each one of those is represented on the board of RMAC. It acts as a conduit for information for policy development through to the minister. It's largely its primary function. But it also has an industry good beyond that of trying to bring the industry together on common issues rather than the industry fighting amongst itself. Let's work out where the common good is, and that's obviously things like animal welfare. It's the rise of plant-based alternative meats, alternative to meats. It's live trade. There's a whole lot of those sort of issues that are generally industry issues that need to be addressed, and RMAC is the place where they get formulated and put through to government.
What do you see as the challenge for you in the period ahead? Your appointment is for how long?
2 years initially. The key challenges will be all those issues that pop up, and now I think every 5 to 10 years there's different issues that pop up in the industry, and certainly animal welfare, emissions are large ones at the moment. But there's also obviously how do you cope with COVID, and shutdowns that have been having in abattoirs. So they have sort of more immediate response issues on top of those bigger, broader issues that just require continuing review of and understanding and how they affect the industry, and therefore how they affect the greater economy of Australia. Because agriculture and red meat in particular is a very important part of the Australian economy, employing a lot of people directly and indirectly.
The war on waste on the ABC really sort of pointed the finger at the red meat industry. Should the response be combative or should it be conciliatory?
There's no point in going out there and telling people they're wrong, and that we're right because we're in the industry, because people need to understand where you're coming from, or they know well where you're coming from if you're representing the red meat industry. There has been a lot of misinformation about the methane intensity of the red meat sector. And what's now coming out, of course, is that methane is a relatively short carbon and lasting about 10 years in the cycle, as opposed to fossil fuels that have a 100-year period. So, and of course, what we're doing in cattle is we're consuming grass, locking up, which is based on a carbon production system. Sure, it's been emitted as methane, goes back up into the atmosphere, comes back down and is absorbed back into the grass again. So it's almost a cycle. Whereas digging up fossil fuel that's been sitting underground for millions of years and releasing it is releasing the genie from the bottle, where I just don't think agriculture is into that same space. But we haven't been particularly good at articulating or getting people to understand that is a closed loop system, not digging up something that's been underground for millions of years and releasing it into the atmosphere.
Well, John, it's been terrific talking to you this afternoon. I really thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Darryl. Good to chat.